Hello and welcome to another Spark AR tutorial video. In this video we'll be looking at how to create this head planet orbiting effect using a head occluder and a bust occluder object provided by Facebook. First I'd like to start this video by saying that I have just got my laptop back, which is fantastic, so you'll have to bear with me if there's any weird nuances whilst I'm still getting it back to the way it used to be. So I'm just going to start off with a new project. There we go. And the first thing I'm going to want to do after I've got a new project is I'm going to want to make sure that I have the two template assets installed on my machine. So to get the head occluder and bust occluder, I'm going to use the neck decoration template. I'm going to go to where it says bust occluder, go to reveal in Finder, and you should have this bust occluder.fbx, and I'm going to save that onto my desktop or into a folder. And I'm going to do the same with my head occluder. Now I'm not going to do this on my machine because I've already just done this, but as you can see we need both the head occluder and bust occluder saved onto our machine, and we'll be importing these into our new project. So nowadays installed on my machine, I'm going to go to import from my computer and select my bust and my head occluder. The reason we're using both is if we use both, we can always use the bust occluder to act as a kind of remover for things like necklaces or wings or anything that kind of would be around the top half of ourselves. I'm just going to turn this onto webcam so we can see what I mean as we test this out. So what I mean is by the bust is sort of like up to this region here. So I'm going to go to add object, add my face tracker, because we're going to need to track our data from our pivot point or central point, which in this case will be our face. I'm just going to drag my head occluder onto my face tracker, and same with my bust occluder. And you should see we have this kind of greyed out head and shoulders mesh. I'm going to go to my head occluder, and I am actually just going to scale this up a little bit, just to make it a bit bigger than I need, just so I've got more space to play with the orbit. And I could also do the same with the bust occluder, but I'm actually think it's pretty much okay. But I am going to possibly move it down a little bit, just to give us a bit more space to work with. There we go. So now I should have my head and bust covered by this grey material. I need to go to my bust occluder Lambert one and change its blend mode to be alpha and its opacity to be 0. Likewise with the head occluder. Now you won't see this do anything yet, but what it will do is it means if any object we put in now will basically be hidden once it passes the back of our head. So to create the planet orbiting my head effect, what I did is I went to add object. I created a null object, and I used this null object as the central pivot point. Made sure this null object was a child of my face tracker. And then I went on to the AR library. I just found a primitive. This could be obviously any model you can make yourself. I'm just using inbuilt assets for the purposes of demonstration. I'm going to choose the sphere and just import that into my project, like so. Cool. So now it's imported, I can drag my sphere onto my null object, and I should have this sort of sphere now just sort of tracking and being mapped on my head. So I want this to rotate round, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to view and show my patch editor, and we're going to rotate this sphere using the null object. Like I said, we're using a null object as essentially our pivot point to offset our anchor essentially. So by selecting my face tracker, I'm going to just check everything is correctly set up, which it is. I'm going to right click and add a loop animation, because I want this animation to basically, loop forever. Drag from the progress and add a transition. So this will be taking the sort of keyframes from one value to another. And I want its rotation values to be nothing to begin with until I plug everything in. So I'm going to drag my null object, I'm going to select my null object, and select the rotation. and hook the null object's rotation to my transition. And now if I type in 360 on the Z, you'll see it will be rotating around itself, which is not what I want. If we do 360 on the Y, it will rotate around like so. That is actually what I want. But at the moment, the sphere is actually in the same position as the null object, which is not desirable. So to fix this, I'm just going to first drag my null and sphere back a little bit, just so it's in the sort of middle of the occlusure. So it should be visible at the moment. And then I'm going to select my sphere. And I'm just going to just reset for a second, just so I'm just going to drag my sphere until it's outside of the head object. And again, the further I make, this will be the wider the orbit is. So if I press play just to check it's okay. So I should have this sphere rotating around like so. Because we used the loop animation, it will just loop indefinitely. I can adjust its speed using the loop animation duration. So I could make this a lot slower. Or I could sort of speed it back up again. So because we've used that null object as the rotation value, I can still offset or move my sphere without having to worry about the kind of complexities of trying to readjust its axis anchor point. So as you see, as I move my head around, it's tracked correctly. So I could still also animate my sphere. So if my sphere was to have a texture on it, like texture of an Earth or planet or something, I could still rotate the sphere around itself to make the Earth or texture rotate. That's why we do it this way as well, because this way I can rotate the same values twice, but use a null object to rotate the object and the object itself to rotate the texture essentially. So what if I wanted to add like a trail? I could go to right click on my sphere and add a particle system. So as you see, I've got this particle system that's now just basically leaving a trail behind it. I'm going to adjust its spray angle to be 0, and I'm also just going to pause again and rotate my emitter's rotation to about, let's see what this looks like. So 180 I think would be sufficient. Let's see. I'm just going to bring up my other window just so I can check what values I put in. Open, recent, orbit. So let's just check what values I put in there. So it was 90 on the Z. Okay. There we go. So now we should have the trail following behind the object. Now the reason it's sort of quite clumped up is because of the way our birth rate and particle lifespan is set. So if I just increase the lifespan a bit, particles will now, oh, that's the scale, sorry. The lifespan looks like this. The trails will now sort of follow and last a bit longer. I can also adjust the birth rate so I can make it fire more continuously. And obviously now, because I've got this emitter, I can assign a material to it and have that material be the following texture. I'm just going to turn the emitter off for now because I actually kind of don't want the emitter on this effect. But I'll just try to show you that you can still parent things to the sphere to have the effect kind of built up on, so to speak. So I'm just going to now import this Earth texture, select my sphere, select my texture of my Earth, and I'm just going to wait until the Earth comes to a sort of central position and pause it so I can reset my Earth's position, because as you see the Earth is currently upside down. So to fix this I just need to rotate this until it's sort of the right way around. And the easiest way of doing that is by pausing it first. So we're going to be rotating it on the Y. So I'm just going to hook this up. So I could actually use this again. So I'm just going to hook this up to the rotation on my sphere. So now the same transition is now going to rotate the null and the texture itself. Actually, I can't do that because I've got to rotate the sphere. So I'm going to have to just duplicate the transition. that up. So I should do this, set this to be 90, select my sphere, rotation, hook this up. So let's just press play and see what goes on there. Is it the right way around? Oop. Not quite. So actually needs to be 180. Let's just see if this sort of looks right. There's a little bit of trial and error going on here. Now, because we've got two values rotating at the same time, it is doing this sort of dual barrel roll thing. So in fact, I probably would want to make sure that my object is the right way round first, and not have it controlled by the rotational value here, which I'm trying to figure a way of doing that, the best way of doing that. I could just create another null object and have another null object parented to this null object. So let's try out doing that. So let's add another null object to this null object. It's okay. And okay, link this sphere to that null. And we can adjust the rotation on this to control our self rotation. There we go. And now I can still go back into the sphere and adjust this to be 180. Let's just check it that way around. Yeah. So see, I can do nulls with nulls to adjust the pivot point, so I can still adjust the values independently of each other by doing it this way. It's not the tidiest way of doing it, but it is a way of doing it. And like I've sort of always said, there's always many ways to achieve the same result. It's about experimenting and working logically. I quite like to work a kind of nestled approach, and if I was spending longer on this, obviously I would rename each of these objects to something that's accordingly, just to make my life easier, because you always want to make sure that whatever you design could be off-handed to another person and they'd be able to look at it and go, yep, I understand what that does, how that works, and how I can change it. You never want the project ideally to be sort of only accessible by yourself with only you knowing what to do. Always try and make it easy to understand and make your life easier where possible. So as always, this project will be included in the Patreon $10 tier pack. Link to Patreon will be down in the description down below. I will be slowing down the number of Spark AR videos I'm doing, just because I'm kind of getting to that point where there isn't a lot I haven't covered or haven't covered in the past, and I just need to kind of maybe remake some of my older ones just because they're a bit outdated, some of them are. And I'm also aiming to move on to other software, which I keep saying I mean to do, but I keep getting requests to do more. I won't be doing video on how to do replacing the eyelashes, sorry, which was a requested video because there's so many other people who've done it, and I don't really want to tread on other people's sort of toes. So anyway, I've been Soon Fisher. If you like my video, remember to like, comment and subscribe. I've been Soon Fisher. If you like my video, soon.